Hello everyone, it's Dylan from Yu-Gi-Oh! Everything, and welcome back to another Yu-Gi-Oh! Video. So in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie that I feel like not a lot of people ever talk about or even sometimes acknowledge. I mean, when you search Yu-Gi-Oh! Movies on Google, the only three that you get are Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, Pyramid of Light, Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time, and Yu-Gi-Oh! The Dark Side of Dimensions. But what some people might not realize is there is actually technically a fourth Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie that was released in 1999 by Toei Animation. Now, Toei Animation also did what's known as Season 0 unofficially. It's the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime series that we ever got, and if you remember Seto Kaiba with green hair, that's basically what Season 0 is. It's only 27 episodes, and it takes place before the events of Duelist Kingdom, but it's definitely not canon to the events of Duelist Kingdom, and to what Studio Gallop would later create, which is known as Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. So in this video, we're going to take a little bit of a dive into the 1999 movie, and we are going to discuss why it's probably not talked about nearly as much when it comes to all of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Films. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. The Yu-Gi-Oh! 1999 movie takes place at some point in the middle of Season 0, although whether it's canon to Season 0 or not is debatable. Seto Kaiba, for instance, does not have his infamous green hair in this movie, and this movie has to take place before the Death Tea arc, but after Kaiba and Yugi dueled in Episode 3, which means maybe Kaiba dyed his hair brown and then dyed his hair back to green before Death Tea, but that probably isn't the case. Why Kaiba has his brown hair might be because at this point, they realized that Kaiba was going to have brown hair going forward in the series when it came to the manga, and they realized they kind of made a mistake by giving him green hair in Season 0, and so that's why the brown hair is seen here in the movie. The movie was released in March of 1999, which was about 6 months after Season 0 officially came to an end, and the plot revolves around a boy named Shogo, who is a very shy duelist and doesn't like dueling. He opens Red Eye's Black Dragon, which is an extremely rare card in this universe, only second in strength to the infamous Blue Eyes White Dragon. Kaiba learns that Shogo has Red Eyes Black Dragon, basically assaults Shogo and Yugi, and forces Yugi to enter a tournament in order to get Red Eyes Black Dragon back. And so Yugi enters Kaiba's tournament and faces off against Kaiba at the end of the movie. Now, there's a few reasons why I feel like this movie is very rarely talked about, especially in the scope of Yu-Gi-Oh! Movies, and one of the biggest is its runtime. To call this a movie is a little bit of a stretch. Now, I know some people will say, well, it's a film, not a movie. And yes, I know there are differences between films and movies, even though they basically mean the same thing and they can refer to the same thing. But this movie is only 30 minutes long in terms of official runtime, but when you remove the ending credits and the opening theme, the movie is really only about 26 minutes. It's probably about 7 minutes longer than a standard episode of any Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, and so when you look at it from that perspective, it's kind of comedic to refer to this as a movie, because when you think movie, you usually think about 90 minutes, even though Bonds Beyond Time is also extremely short for a movie. This movie was released in theaters in Japan as part of Toei Animation's Spring 1999 Animation Fair, and it was featured alongside Digimon Adventure, which is also extremely short, and Dr. Slump: A Rail's Surprise Burn. Now, the Dr. Slump movie is actually much longer. It's about 90 minutes, so it seems like that was the main movie, and then you had this Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie and the Digimon Adventure movie as kind of the short films that were released alongside it. And these three films collectively grossed about 650 million yen by 2001, which is the equivalent to $6.5 million US in 2019, which is pretty actually good, especially for the times and for how short these two movies were, referring to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Digimon. Now, Yugi goes on to duel Seto Kaiba and finally summons Dark Magician. It's the only time in any Toei animation when it came to Yu-Gi-Oh! That Dark Magician was actually summoned. I did a short on this recently. even though Dark Magician is heavily featured in the Season 0 opening, Yugi never actually plays Dark Magician on screen until this movie. So it was really cool seeing Dark Magician and the magical hats combination, something that would later be mimicked by Studio Gallop in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. Yugi would eventually go on to summon Meteor Black Dragon by fusing Red Eyes Black Dragon with Meteor Dragon, and destroys Kaiba's Blue Eyes White Dragon's 3-body connection and wins the duel. Shogo gains courage. He learns why it's important to try to take that step forward, and that is basically the movie. It's another movie where Yugi defeats Kaiba. Tell me where we've seen that one before. But I feel like the reason this never really gets talked about is because a lot of people just don't know it exists. It's such a short film, and if you have no recollection of Season 0 and have no interest in anything before Studio Gallop, then there's no reason you would ever really watch this movie or know about this movie. Whenever somebody says Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie, people immediately think of Pyramid of Light because that had a much larger release outside of Japan. I think that's another big thing. This was never officially subbed outside of Japan, so there's no way to legally consume it. Whereas Pyramid of Light, Bonds Beyond Time, and Dark Side of Dimensions all got official English releases, and there are official ways to watch the subs of those movies as well. And so I feel like that's probably the reason why this never gets talked about. Accessibility and people just not really caring for things that came before Duel Monsters. Heck, I think a lot of people probably consider Duel Monsters to be the first Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime. A lot of people probably don't even know that Season 0 and the Toei Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a real thing and where you would even watch it. Spoiler alert, you can actually watch this movie and all the episodes on YouTube. I'll link the channel down below. I don't think Toei at this point really cares too much about the copyright when it comes to this production. So if you do want to watch the movie, I will have it linked down below in the description. I definitely encourage you to do it. Again, it's just a little longer than a standard episode. But the fact that this is the only Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie that never had an official English release, the fact that it happened before the anime that made Yu-Gi-Oh! Famous, which of course was Duel Monsters, and the fact that it is just so short and really stretches the bounds of what technically a movie is, if there is, of course, a time restraint on movies. I know there technically isn't, but I think most people, when they hear the term movie, think at least an hour. I always think at least 90 minutes. And so with all of those factors being said, I think a lot of people just don't care for this and don't even know that it's a real thing. And that's why you never really hear people talking about the 1999 film. There's just not as much substance as there are in the other movies, even though, sure, Pyramid of Light has a lot of, you know, not great substance, but there's a lot more to that movie. You have the nostalgia factor for when we were all young and were watching Yu-Gi-Oh! Growing up. Bonds Beyond Time has the nostalgia and time travel factor where we can actually see multiple Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists interacting. It's like the only time we have ever seen that, which is the coolest freaking thing. And then Yu-Gi-Oh! Dark Side of Dimensions is seen by many, including me, to be the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie and a great conclusion to Yugi's story and the story of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters manga. So I think all of those three movies bring something to the table where, in all honesty, I just don't think this movie really brings anything new to the table. But I think those are the reasons why nobody really talks about this movie, and this movie is really not known by a lot of people, especially people that are probably more casual fans of Yu-Gi-Oh! But guys, let me know your thoughts on the 1999 film, the last piece of Yu-Gi-Oh! Related anime media that Toei Animation ever created before Yu-Gi-Oh! Is handed over to Studio Gallop for really the next 2 decades. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm looking forward to talking to you in the comments, and I hope you have an amazing day. Take care, guys.